Hello, and welcome back to episode 36 of From the Source podcast. So today we're going to be speaking about kind of one of the biggest reasons why people stall or burn out or get injured. And that isn't because of a lack of effort. It's actually, I was going to say all the time, but most of the time it's kind of poor control of your volume and like your intensity of your training, basically picking the right times when to train hard and when to just take it easy. So that's obviously about doing too much too often, or not quite doing enough intense training to push you over onto that next level of training or your ability. And kind of some people will train too hard every session and wonder why your legs feel heavy, you don't have any strength, you feel like very flat, and it's not really kind of working out for you, you're just training for the sake of it. So kind of going to break down how we adjust our training over time and what progressive overload means and people's understanding of that. And you see so many videos that I'm trying to think of, like the powerlifters or the bodybuilders and stuff that used to speak about it, but saying like overload training's the way to progress, and you can do it consistently without getting injured and stuff, which isn't true. Overload, constantly putting so much stress on your body needs time to actually recover. How you can deload properly when you're training is a big one. A lot of people forget about that. Once I understood the deload and once I wanted to do it and actually allowed myself the time to do it, it was a kind of a game changer in that respect to my training. Allowed me to train better once I was back into the training weeks. And then, as always, just some like tools and stuff for like recovery and stuff that we'll speak about. But kind of what is progressive overload? So it isn't completely overloading your body every single session. It literally is how it's said as progressive overload. Over time, you're adding more stress, and if that's more weight, more reps, more sets, a further distance, a faster time, slightly higher intensity, all of those contribute to progressive overload. And I can't remember what episode it was that I probably spoke about this on, but it's like, say you're at level 1 now, you're progressing along, you add, say if I'm a runner, I'll add more intensity to bump me up to level 2, you spend some time on level 2, then up to 3, and then continuously like that. It's not just one day I'm going to do a 20-minute 5k, and then the next day I'm going to try and push to do a 19-minute, the next day 18-minute. It just doesn't work like that. You're not driving a car, but even then, cars are limited based on the size of that particular model of the car, and then you buy the same Jag but a bigger engine, and that's all you're doing. You're increasing your engine, you're increasing your size to push you on to that next level. And progress won't happen every single session. I can go running today and run really well and think, I feel really confident, I feel really good. I'm going to go out and do the same thing tomorrow and push the distance a little bit or push the time, and it'll be a crap session. I'll be like, oh my God, I've done everything exactly the same as I did yesterday. Where's it all gone? It's weird and wonderful, but it doesn't happen every time. It'll happen weekly, or it'll happen per block. It'll happen like every, before every race. It's progressive overload is just the way to go with it. It's not just constantly increasing your intensity. So it's like I said, small, steady increases. So say if you wanted to get stronger, you don't start on 60 and then just expect every single day to go score 10 kilos till you hit like 100 kilo bench press. You've got to add in like muscle fatigue, muscle recovery, nutrition, rest, all of those things have got to be right every single day to slowly start to progress. And that is the only way to do it. So hence why people train for like marathons and stuff. It's like a 16-week plan, because during that plan you would have gone up, down, if it was on a graph and stuff, plateaued a little bit, pick yourself back up, but the whole time it's an increase in trend, working towards that, faster time or that ability to run that distance. So adding more work will allow your body to cope, which is kind of the thing behind progressive overload. But sometimes kind of people will miss the warning signs along the way, or the kind of tips that your body's giving you as to why you're kind of overtraining or undertraining. And I feel like overtraining is like spoken about a lot, but undertraining is kind of forgotten, because people won't really class it as like undertraining. They're just like, yeah, I'm still training, why don't I get any better? But you're actually below your level 1 or whatever you're at. So 4 or 5 potential signs that you're currently overtraining. Persistent fatigue, so constantly feeling tired, and none of that kind of, your training doesn't improve with any rest. Declining performance, despite your consistent effort to train well. You're really up for it every time, but you're not cracking the times out, you're not lifting the weights properly, you're just slowly but surely kind of falling away. Poor sleep, like low motivation and stuff. I mean, that's like a sign of stress as well, if you're talking about in the work environment. But if you're not sleeping very well, you can't switch off because you're constantly thinking about it. You've got low motivation to do it, even though you want to do it, but you can't pick yourself up enough to actually get out there. And then constant like aches and niggles and kind of soreness, depending on what you're training towards here. And all of those kind of will all tie into potential motivation and overall motivation to like not do it, and that'll contribute to a decline. And then before you know it, you'll probably not be training at all, and you'll have like weeks or months off, and then getting back to it is worse than just pulling back a little bit when you notice any of those signs. Now, some signs of undertraining is, well, no real progress over weeks and months. So you're just basically just going through the motions. It's just, I need to run 4 times this week. All right, I'm just going to make sure I go out 4 times. And it's just, this will all contribute to no real progress, and you don't really feel like you're going anywhere. You're running the same distances every week, you're running the same times, you're running the same routes. You're just going through the motions. Kind of your sessions will sometimes maybe feel too easy. It's very easy to just go out for like a zone 2 10k and just plod through it, rather than like a tough 6k interval session. You'll just pick the easy ones, and all this is contributing to like undertraining, just going through the motions. There's no challenge to your training, which means you're not like adapting to the harder sessions. You're not making any progress. And then there's kind of the last one I had was, well, it was actually adaptations. I've just made 2 into 1 there, but overtraining, like I said, is spoken about more. Overtraining is more common than people think. They're always like, if I train more, if I train harder, I'll just get better quicker, and it doesn't work. It takes people years, like, potentially like a decade, to be able to lift like a decent amount of weight. What they dreamt of when I was like 18. You always dreamt of like consistently being able to like bench 100 kilos and look cool in the gym, and that isn't a quick thing. At 18, your body's not adapted to anything. It's still growing. You still got to get kind of all that base strength in, whereas you can get to like your late 20s, early 30s, and you can be hitting those weights consistently if you're training well. So most people will just push really hard at the start when they start in this journey, and that usually contributes to why people drop off the training, because they just, in a way, throw your toys out the pram, and they're just like, I just can't do it. It's not coming to me fast enough. I'm not getting where I want to be quick enough. So if you're kind of in that rut of like over or under training, sometimes, like I said, the best thing to do is to deload and just have a week. I was going to say a week off the intensity, and that's where like your training blocks, 16-week block, you do 3 tough weeks, week off, 3 tough weeks, week off. And by week off, I mean like a deload. So, you maybe drop the level of the amount of distance you're doing in a week, or the intensity slightly. Slowly drop yourself back down to a normal level to then take yourself back up past where you were. Now, deloading is, I think, I've done this based on runners really, because at the minute I'm mainly running more than I am doing anything else. And like I said, deload is planning a reduction in that training level into your plan. So like I said, sometimes people do it at the start of your 4th week is the deload, or it's kind of the start of the 5th. It depends on your training, and kind of work it around what you're going to be doing at the time as well. But deloading isn't completely stopping training. It just allows your body some time to recover, and that isn't just like a week of sitting on the sofa. It's you still do your zone 2, still do your tempos, still do your intervals, just the intensity is not the same. So you might go slower for longer, or that's basically what you would do, and you'd reduce your distance in the zone 2. If you've been doing like a 10k, maybe do like a 6 or a 7. More recovery in that week, kind of focus more on like stretching, theragunning, stuff like that. So in a deload, you kind of reduce your volume kind of around 30% of what you've been doing. Now that's very loose depending on how much volume you are doing to start with, and the intensity that you're doing it at. And like I said, keeping the movements the same, as in intervals, tempos, zone 2s. You can adapt this still for like, if you're lifting and stuff, lifting weights, still do the same squats and same exercises and stuff, but not as much intensity, maybe not as much speed through like if you're doing metcons and stuff, tweaking whatever you're doing, just less intensity, less of it. So for runners, you could just be reducing your mileage, overall mileage, and just keep some more of your runs a bit easier. You could maybe add a zone 2 and an interval together. It's just like short little bursts, but not to the same intensity. There's loads of different tweaks you want to be doing, but you want to be finishing that deload week like more refreshed. It's kind of like you've gone on a running holiday, running intensity holiday, and just really slacked off for a bit. That's what you want to be feeling. And like I said at the start of this episode, deloading is far easier to do in the plan than carrying on the intense plan for 16 weeks and more than likely dropping out of that plan because of injury, or because of like lack of motivation or overtraining. Like I've mentioned, it's a real common thing that people just slam through it and forget about giving the time for the body to recover. And if you are preparing for a race, you'll get to that race and you'll feel absolutely knackered. You won't have anything left in you because, you've practically done your marathon for the last 16 weeks in the same intensity. You want to build that training up with all the deloads in. Last week is like a deload week. Just chill out, stretch, get yourself ready, and then you'll be raring to go, at the start of the race. It's a good way to progress using deloads, and it also mentally keeps you still motivated to do it. It's a good way to just, help your body out for a bit instead of just, overtraining and hurting it all the time. I was going to talk about kind of tools to track your recovery and performance and stuff, but I mean, this is just something I like looking at because I just like looking at data and trends and stuff like that. Pretty boring with it to other people, but there's loads of different tools out there. I'm not going to go through them again, but there's obviously your Stravas and all your smartwatches and stuff, which will literally be able to tell you this. Michael Ross tells me if I'm performing well in training, reducing my intensity, increasing my performance, fatiguing, everything just based on like my zones that I'm running in and the training intensity. So pretty much technology will do that for you now. So I won't go through that. Now, the last little bit I've got is like about balancing training frequency and rest days. So your progress will come from training and recovery and not just training alone. Rest days are kind of where your adaptations are happening, your recovery is happening, your muscles are progressing, getting stronger, faster. And more sessions, like I've said, which will link into overtraining, more sessions aren't the best way to go to get better at something. It's just the classic phrase of quality over quantity. It's if I had 3 really good sessions throughout the week, I'll progress way more than someone who's training every single day. And at the start, say if you're competing with your mates and stuff, that's really hard to understand because you're just like, my mates are training every single day. I want to do the same because they're clearly going to get better than me. At the start, they might do, but throughout the whole plan, they're probably going to struggle. They'll get more niggles and everything compared to you. So if you're a beginner, kind of the general rule of thumb, if you will, for training is kind of 2 to 4 quality sessions a week. Now I'd just stick to just doing 2 to 4 sessions if I just started, just to get yourself used to it and then build into it. But if you're doing a hard training day, if it's kind of it's your hardest one of the week, it's either the day after is either a rest day or like a chill day, like an easy day. So that could just be like a zone 2, just a 5k shake out, nothing crazy, just keep the body moving. 5k shake out, little stretch, chill out for the rest of the day. But if you're doing every single session and every single one feels hard, you just need to rein it back in. The amount of times I speak to people who have said, I've just gone out for a zone 2, and I'm like, all right, how quick did you run it? And they're like, yeah, I've just did about a 5:30 pace. I'm like, oh, what do you normally do your zone 2s at and stuff? And they're just like, I don't know, just 5:15ish or something like that. You've not really backed off. As a zone 2ish for someone like that should be like a 6 minute, maybe a 6:10, and that feels like slow as anything when you're running it. But those zone 2s are where you're building that full cardio base, and then you're basically using the intervals and the tempos to just get your body used to the intensity of like running faster. The zone 2s are the ones where you make the progress. And obviously all of this is about consistency over months, even years. Like I said, when you're 18, you've got a long journey to progress. And it's obviously down to, are you making progress, whatever you class progress to be, are you making progress every single week? And if you are, that's good. Some weeks you'll make more progress, other weeks, you'll just make like 0.1% progress, but it's still progress. You don't want to be progressing, and then fall off a cliff because you've overtrained. It's too intense. You can't handle it. Then you put off by, lack of motivation, injuries, and everything else, and then kind of that dream that you had to be strong or be quick kind of just falls away because you just fall out of love of it. So, just listen to your body, but push yourself a little bit, and keep in mind what the end goal is. And there's no real rush to do it. So adjusting your volume and intensity isn't always about training less. It's kind of just all about, are you training with the intent to be better? And I've put a little quote that I found somewhere, that the goal isn't to see how much you can survive. It's to train in a way that still works next month, next year, and beyond. And that is literally the way to do it. You've got to keep yourself in the game, if you will, the game of training life. And it's all about training smart, recovering well, and to keep progressing. That is the only way to do all this. And you'll see people on Instagram and TikTok and whatever, they'll bullshit you and say they've lifted this within 2 weeks of training and stuff like that, and all the other crap. They got faster because of this, and got faster because they have just eaten magnesium for a week and stuff like that. It's all bullshit. It's a long game. You have to play the long game, and as long as you're progressing along the way, that's the way to go. But adjusting your volume and your intensity will work for you. It's all part of people's plans. It's what everyone else has done, and all the pros that are out there do exactly the same. Unfortunately, they just train on a completely different level to what we do. But train smart and keep yourself in the game. That's going to be the way to do it. So, thank you for listening, watching, however you view the podcast episodes. If it's on, I think YouTube Shorts is doing quite well recently, so maybe you're watching some of this on there. But for everyone who's listened, for everyone who's supported the podcast so far, thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one.